Hey, if you're a new software engineer, here's some advice for how to get into it. First, I would recommend starting a YouTube channel. I know this doesn't necessarily seem like it's specific to software engineering, but when you're working on lead code or take home assessments or just various tasks that you might find in books, it isn't necessarily very accurate to what software engineering is in real life. So, when you start a YouTube channel, as you go through those, it can be helpful to at least get a perspective for what you're doing and why you're doing it, reflecting on that as you create the title and description, and seeing the ways that you process information. Next, I would find two good projects that you want to work on. You could work on one, but the idea behind finding two is that you need to switch between contexts. You're not going to be able to keep everything in your brain at once. You're going to need to switch contexts and use context clues to understand where you are with each. Returning to a project that you haven't worked on for a while might be overwhelming, but it also gives you a good idea for how easy it is to integrate with the things that you're trying to do. Is it easy or hard to implement these features, and what makes that possible? Developing a relationship to speed and implementation means that you iterate over different ideas in different spaces. Trying to do something quickly doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it well, and trying to do something well doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it quickly. But ideally, you would find a midpoint between the two. That would be really helpful for software engineering. Then, once you get into it, once you find the job, you can compare your experiences to the ways your team has approached similar tasks. You're going to have your own opinions, and they're going to be received differently depending on the team that you're on. But the goal here is to actually have opinions about what you're doing. Then eventually you can find a team that aligns with those opinions or enables you to find new ones. People say that you should find a mentor or more experienced developers, but what that means really depends on what you're doing. So finding a starting point is the main thing. Two projects that you can switch between is really helpful for developing a diverse set of experiences and opinions. Next, I would recommend at the same time that you're doing those projects to get into Git as soon as possible. Being able to associate specific commits with specific goals, especially if you have a YouTube channel that you can kind of associate those timestamps with, is tremendously helpful. Then you can look back at your work and say, oh, this did go well, or this didn't go well. You can look at the history and say, this code changed a lot and this code didn't change that much, and see where there are points of stability that make your project more mature. Also, when you're actually a software engineer working on a team, you're probably going to use some version of version control. So getting into Git will make you stand out that much more. So to recap, start a YouTube channel, find two projects that you can switch between, and make sure you use Git to understand how you keep track of progress. The YouTube channel I'm on is at Splashy. I make videos about software engineering, design, and art. Subscribe if you want to see this more. I'm not actually sure if the YouTube algorithm cares about subscriptions, but like the video if you thought it was helpful.